On the afternoon of April 23, 2006, a tragic scene was uncovered in a quiet home. Mark Richardson, age 42, and his wife Deborah, age 48, were found deceased in their basement. Upstairs, their 8-year-old son, Tyler Jacob, was also found lifeless. Alarmingly, the couple's 12-year-old daughter, Jasmine, was not found at the scene, sparking immediate fears for her safety. However, as the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that the circumstances were far more sinister than anyone initially suspected. Today's story is set in Medicine Hat, a small city about 200 miles southeast of Calgary, known as Canada's sunniest spot. It's a lively town favored by young, outdoorsy families, offering plenty of natural beauty and activities. The Richardson family enjoyed all the perks of life here. Deborah and Mark Richardson, along with their children, 8-year-old Tyler and 12-year-old Jasmine, represented a typical family unit. Deborah and Mark originally met in 1990 at a gym in Ontario where they both attended classes, including one for substance abuse recovery. They had conquered their past addictions by the time they met, and after moving to Medicine Hat, they started their family with Jasmine, followed by Tyler 4 years later. Their life in Medicine Hat was peaceful. Their home was modest, and both children were thriving and healthy. Jasmine, especially, was doing well in school and was known as an honor student at just 11 years old. She was cheerful, pretty, and had a contagious smile, much like her mother. However, as Jasmine entered her teenage years, her personality began to shift, a common scenario for many teens. Although she started this phase as a happy, church-going student, her demeanor changed dramatically when she discovered the internet. While she continued to be bubbly and friendly in person, online she adopted a completely different persona. Jasmine became active on social media platforms like MySpace, where her profile gradually shifted from light and girly to a darker, gothic theme. She also joined Vampire Freaks, a site aimed at connecting those interested in goth, punk, and emo subcultures. Her profile showcased her in thick eyeliner, alternative clothes, and posing with prop guns. Jasmine's social media profiles were a clear window into her teenage interests: piercings, tattoos, Tim Burton movies, toy guns, and loud music were all the rage among emo teens in the mid-2000s. She used a made-up name and claimed she was 15. She liked talking to older people, trying to seem as mature as they were. Her parents did their best to help her through these tough changes by suggesting they spend more time together and find activities they could all enjoy. But Jasmine wasn't interested. She saw her younger brother Tyler as a bother and hardly spoke to him anymore. Jasmine could spend hours at her computer, chatting with people she'd never met in person. Her parents, Deborah and Mark, believed this was just a phase. They thought she would eventually grow out of it and become more sensible. So they were pretty lenient about her new interests. She regularly attended local music shows that catered to the younger crowd. Jasmine, only 12, would typically go to these events with a group of her friends. However, it was at one of these punk rock concerts that things began to take a troubling turn. At this show, Jasmine met a 23-year-old named Jeremy Steinke. Jeremy was a troubled individual. He had dropped out of high school after enduring severe bullying and had since refused to seek employment. Instead, he lived in a trailer park with his mother, who struggled with alcoholism and had unstable relationships, leading to a revolving door of men in their home. These men were often abusive towards Jeremy, adding to his difficult circumstances. Jeremy had a tough life, often facing physical abuse from his mother's boyfriends. At 23 years old in 2006, he was without a job and spent most of his time chatting online with much younger girls. Jeremy saw himself as a bit of an oddball, a view that his friends agreed with, especially when he shared some strange facts about himself. For instance, Jeremy claimed to enjoy the taste of blood and said he drank it regularly. He even carried a vial of blood around his neck for whenever he felt the urge to indulge in this unusual craving. Jeremy also had a peculiar claim that he was a 300-year-old werewolf. This strange assertion left many skeptical, especially because Medicine Hat had seen many full moons without any incidents, leading some to dismiss his claim as nonsense. Jasmine first encountered Jeremy at a local punk rock concert where she falsely told him she was 15, though she was really just 12 years old. Despite the age difference, this did not seem to bother Jeremy, who had a preference for younger girls because he found them easier to influence and control. They started exchanging messages across various social media platforms. As the months passed, Jeremy and Jasmine's conversations became more frequent and intense. Jeremy's alternative lifestyle and interests began to shape Jasmine, pushing their chats into a disturbingly romantic direction. Influenced by Jeremy, Jasmine started to embrace a darker, gothic lifestyle. Jeremy's declaration of love was extreme. He gave Jasmine a vial of his own blood, similar to one he wore. This relationship soon became known to Jasmine's parents, who were understandably shocked and worried upon discovering her involvement with an older man. They promptly grounded her and confiscated her computer to cut off communication. To help Jasmine break away from what they saw as a harmful relationship, they decided to seek the help of a psychologist. They truly believed that counseling would repair and strengthen their bond with their daughter. To their relief, it seemed to work. Jasmine appeared to be cooperating and moving back towards a more normal life. She promised her past behaviors were behind her, and so her parents gave her computer back. This decision, however, would tragically lead to their undoing. But did Jasmine cut ties with Jeremy? Not at all. They soon reconnected, this time more secretive than before. Jeremy was infuriated by her parents' interference, expressing his anger through dark, aggressive poetry. He even fantasized about dramatic and violent actions against her parents, echoing a disturbingly romantic notion of eliminating obstacles to their relationship. Jasmine, perhaps influenced by Jeremy's intense emotions, also expressed extreme sentiments in her messages, joking about drastic actions against her own parents to be with Jeremy. While it's common for teenagers to express frustration with their parents, the context here was far more serious, given Jeremy's manipulative nature and his influence over Jasmine. This situation was not just teenage melodrama. It was being shaped by Jeremy's dark fantasies, blurring the line between jest and potential reality. The Richardson family continued their daily lives, seemingly content. Mark and Deborah were relieved to see their daughter Jasmine showing signs of improvement, and their son Tyler was enjoying his carefree childhood as a cheerful 8-year-old. Unknown to them, a sinister plan was being formed behind a computer screen, with Jasmine involved in plotting against her own family. Jasmine often complained to her friends about how much her parents annoyed her, expressing a desire to end their lives, but nobody took her seriously. On the night of Saturday, April 22, 2006, as Mrs. Richardson was getting ready for bed, she heard a noise in the basement and thought it might be rats. She went downstairs to check, flipped on the light, and to her shock, saw a person in a ski mask standing there. She screamed in fright, and the masked person rushed at her, trying to silence her. Despite his efforts, Deborah fought back, screaming even louder. The attacker then stabbed her repeatedly with a knife. Hearing his wife's screams, Mark grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a screwdriver he had left out from fixing an outlet earlier that day, and ran to the basement. He arrived to find his wife in a pool of blood and confronted the attacker, only to be stabbed in the stomach and then multiple times more. As he lay dying, Mark asked, "Why?" The attacker coldly responded, "Because your daughter wished it." Upstairs, their young son Tyler was left alone, sitting on his bed in his pajamas, too scared to move as he heard the footsteps approaching his room. The door then slowly opened. The next day, on a calm Sunday, April 23, 2006, the neighborhood was quiet, with families engaged in their usual weekend activities. It was a typical Sunday with children playing outside, including a boy who decided to visit his friend Tyler. However, when he knocked on the door of the Richardsons' home, no one answered, even though their car was parked in the driveway. Puzzled, the boy peeked through a basement window and was startled to see a motionless figure on the floor. Alarmed, he rushed home to inform his mother, who promptly called the police. The police arrived to find the door unlocked and the house disturbingly quiet. Their investigation began in the basement, where they discovered the lifeless bodies of Deborah and Mark Richardson in a gruesome scene, surrounded by pools of their own blood. Deborah had been stabbed 12 times in the chest, and Mark had suffered 24 wounds to his chest and back. The tragedy extended further as the police found Tyler's body in his bedroom, surrounded by blood-soaked toys, with multiple stab wounds and his throat cut. As the officers surveyed the scene, family photos hinted at a missing member, Jasmine. Initially, it seemed like a brutal home invasion, possibly involving Jasmine's abduction. An Amber Alert was issued for the missing girl as police started to investigate, beginning with her school and friends. A shocking discovery came when they accessed Jasmine's school locker. Among her belongings, they found a disturbing stick figure drawing depicting a family walk that ends in horror. The sketch showed one family member retrieving gasoline from a truck, dousing the others and setting them on fire. This grim drawing suggested a very different narrative from an abduction, hinting at Jasmine's involvement in the tragedy. When authorities found the chilling drawing in Jasmine's locker, they began to view her disappearance with suspicion, suspecting that she might be involved in her family's murder. Prompted by Jasmine's friends, who revealed Jeremy's affection for Jasmine and disturbing remarks about harming her parents, police quickly started looking also for Jeremy. These leads, coupled with a slew of digital evidence from messages, emails, and chat logs, helped investigators piece together a grim motive. Soon, the story of the suspected killer couple was making headlines, shocking and horrifying the Medicine Hat community. Detectives turned to the media to help find Jasmine, hoping she would make contact or that someone would provide information that could lead to her. Due to her age, Canadian law prohibited the media from publishing Jasmine's real name, so news agencies started referring to her simply as JR. However, police uncovered that a few hours after the crime, Jasmine and Jeremy were seen at a restaurant and later at a party hosted by an acquaintance. Witnesses at the party noted that Jasmine seemed normal, showing no signs of abduction or shock. She was seen drinking and enjoying herself. When questioned by friends about how they managed to escape from her parents, Jasmine laughed and remarked, "Jeremy and I just took care of them," to which Jeremy added, "I carved them up like fish." The party guests thought this was a dark joke, not realizing the truth in their words. Their infamy led to their downfall. Within 24 hours of the murders, they were spotted in the community of Leader, Saskatchewan, about 100 miles from Medicine Hat. Police found them sleeping in a pickup truck and arrested them without resistance. Despite their arrest, Jasmine and Jeremy seemed indifferent, showing more annoyance than remorse. During interrogation, their apparent unity crumbled. Jeremy confessed that Jasmine had implored him to eliminate her parents, promising to do anything for her. In turn, Jasmine pinned the blame solely on Jeremy, claiming her previous talks of killing her family were just jokes and she never intended any real harm. However, Jeremy's version aligned more convincingly with the extensive digital evidence, suggesting that both had actively participated in the planning and execution of the crime. The burning question was, what exactly was their plan? On the night of April 22nd, Jasmine stealthily let Jeremy into her house. She then went upstairs as Jeremy headed to the basement. There, he confronted Deborah and brutally attacked her with a folding knife. The noise woke Mark, who rushed to help his wife, only to find himself in a deadly struggle. Mark dashed towards the basement upon hearing a disturbance, only to discover his wife on the floor with a masked man looming over her. A struggle ensued as Mark attempted to wrestle the knife away from the intruder, but tragically, he was overpowered and sustained multiple stab wounds to his chest and back. As he lay fading, he managed to ask the assailant why, to which the chilling reply was, "Because your daughter wanted it that way." Mark succumbed to his injuries shortly thereafter. While this grim scene unfolded downstairs, Jasmine was upstairs, supposedly tasked with killing her younger brother Tyler, who was peacefully asleep. The accounts of what happened next vary significantly between Jasmine and Jeremy. Jeremy asserted that Jasmine had acted alone in killing Tyler. Jasmine, on the other hand, claimed she initially hesitated, and it was Jeremy who urged her to go through with it. She admitted to stabbing Tyler, albeit reluctantly, which she described as weakly. However, evidence showed that Tyler had been stabbed 5 times, including a severe laceration to his throat. After the murders, Jeremy left the scene, leaving Jasmine alone in the house with the bodies of her family. She then took a taxi to Jeremy's trailer, escaping the horrific scene she had left behind. During the trial, a taxi driver testified about picking up Jasmine shortly after the murders. Remarkably, she appeared calm and greeted him cheerfully, showing no signs of distress despite the recent loss of her entire family. After being picked up, Jasmine reunited with Jeremy, and the two spent the next 24 hours together, seemingly unaffected by the gravity of their actions. They were observed being affectionate in public, even visiting friends and boastfully discussing what they had done. Their lack of remorse extended even after their arrest. Interestingly, authorities allowed them to exchange letters, possibly hoping to gather more evidence from their communications. In these letters, Jeremy proposed to Jasmine, and she accepted, further demonstrating their disconnect from the severity of their situation and the normal responses expected under such circumstances. After Jasmine claimed that Jeremy was solely responsible for the murders, the pair faced their trials a year later, in June 2007. Jeremy, being an adult, was subjected to the full extent of the law. His defense painted him as a psychologically weak individual with low self-esteem, blaming his violent actions on a history of abuse from his mother's lovers and a desperate craving for affection. They argued that he sought Jasmine's love to fill the emotional void from his troubled childhood, a sentiment echoed by his friends who said he would do anything for her affection. Nonetheless, such explanations did not excuse the heinous nature of his crimes, and Jeremy was sentenced to 3 life terms, with a possibility of parole after 25 years. Jasmine, referred to as JR in court due to her age, was also found guilty of murdering her family. The digital evidence and her behavior before and after the murders painted a clear picture of her involvement. Her lack of remorse was striking, especially when she was observed smiling while recounting the events of her family's deaths during her testimony. However, because she was a minor at the time of the crimes, The harshest sentence she could receive under Canadian law was 10 years, which included psychiatric care and monitored living in a community setting rather than traditional incarceration. This lighter sentence reflects the complexities of dealing with young offenders, even those involved in grave crimes. During her incarceration, Jasmine was often cited as a model of successful rehabilitation. Through therapy and severing ties with Jeremy, she began to show genuine remorse for her actions, convincing the authorities responsible for her rehabilitation that she was unlikely to reoffend. The person in charge of her expressed hope for her transformation, suggesting that her family, had they survived, might have been proud of her progress. He reminded her that while the past cannot be changed, she has control over her daily actions and behavior. In the last 5 years of her sentence, Jasmine studied under a new identity to help her reintegrate into society. She was released in 2016 and has since lived anonymously among the public. Meanwhile, Jeremy remains incarcerated, a situation many deem appropriate considering his predatory behavior prior to the murders. The debate over Jasmine's sentencing remains contentious. Some argue that if someone is old enough to commit a crime, they should face the full consequences, while others believe that Jasmine, who was only 12 at the time and manipulated by an older man, deserved a chance for rehabilitation. After maintaining a clean record for 5 years following her release, Jasmine's criminal record was expunged, allowing her a fresh start without the burden of her past crimes. Mark and Deborah Richardson are remembered as caring parents. The complexity of Jasmine's case raises difficult questions about justice, punishment, and rehabilitation, especially considering her age and the influence exerted by an older individual. While 10 years may seem short given the severity of the crime, the circumstances of her age and manipulation add layers of complexity to the discussion of her case. Canada's judicial approach often emphasizes rehabilitation over strict punishment, which sets it apart from places like the U.S., where the focus might lean more towards punitive measures. This philosophy raises complex questions, especially in cases like Jasmine's. Despite being only 12 years old when she committed her crimes, the severity of her actions, killing her entire family, is undeniable. This leads to a significant debate. Can someone who has committed such grave acts be fully reformed and trusted once released? And with that, we end today's Unreal True Crime. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like if you appreciate my work. Until next time.